Hello Tamers, throwback again today, and well, it's finally the day of Social Booster 2.5's great release, with the final deck of our countdown being one deck that will likely be seeing the spotlight in the 2.5 format due to the support that comes from it, and that deck ends up being Royal Knights. And well, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to help with the algorithm. And well, let's get into it. Starting off, for the egg of the deck, ends up being the normal go-to of Yggdrasill at 4 copies. As well, given the Megazoo nature of this deck, Yggdrasill ends up being your cost reducer, though unlike Deadly Sins, it ends up not giving you the ability to evolve on your turn. And also, the cost reduction is singular use as it's tied to the main face-up Yggdrasill, being a -4 off the bat, and adding an additional -1 per card underneath itself. So, off the bat, that's immediately a -5 on your first Royal Knight that you play off. And as everyone who's played the deck knows, the inheritable for the egg itself will be you gain 1 memory whenever you play a Royal Knight's option card. And well, that's it for the egg of the deck. Now on to the Digimon lineup. Starting off with the rookie lineup. And then I end up playing 3 copies of Systemon Blanc from Structure Deck, 12, 1 copy of Labramon, and 2 copies of the BT3 Vmon. Since, during this time, Blanc is still one of the staple go-tos for Royal Knights, being able to pitch a Royal Knight in order to draw 2, as well as providing decoy for your Royal Knights. Labra being a utility tool for one of the cards that you in this deck that's only recyclable off of Labra if it ever heads to trash. And then the 2 jamming Vs for another piece in the deck that sees use. Well, this also ends up being another good beat stick of the deck, and that's a jamming body as well. And that's it for the rookie lineup. Now on to level 4s, and the start of the meat of the deck. Starting off for the lineup is the obvious frontrunner of full playset of Omekamon. For the obvious reason that ends up being the support for the deck, as the on-play is a draw 1, and the main function being the on-delete to pitch 1 Royal Knight in hand underneath Yggdrasill to increase the reduction when you do want to play out a Royal Knight that turn. And to round off level 4s, ends up being all Magnamons, that being a full playset BT13 Magna, and 2 copies of the Structure Deck 17 Magna, with BT13 Magna being the go-to, and pretty much first Royal Knight you'd be playing and starting off, as Magna is the lowest costing, well, both Magnas really, with BT13 being the more useful of the 2 as a starting play. Since, even though it's a blocker body, you have the alternate effect of whenever it leaves the field, you get to draw 1, which helps, given that, well, that also includes Yggdrasill's own ability to scoop Magna underneath, given that's a Royal Knight, and thus it would trigger. While Structure Deck Magna here is an inclusion as, well, an option that works well, given that we have the jamming V in the deck. As, well, it has the security effect to Digivolve 1 and Digivolve a V into itself when checked in security. And again, the effect of King Yggdrasill doesn't really apply to this, as it's during the opponent's turn instead of your turn. Thus, also Blast Digivolution also is usable in the deck. And well, continuing on, this Magna also ensures another blocker is in play, while also being able to Armor Purge, leaving the Jamming V on board. With the one Digivolving also being another good form of control, as it allows you to trash the top evolution source of imposing Digimon based off of the color it has, and then bounces a Digimon with no sources back to hand. And well, that's it for the level 4 lineup. Now on to level 6s. And starting off, we open with the two key level 6s for the deck, being a full playset of BT13 Dynasmon and BT19 Lord Nightmon. And Lord, with Dynasmon here being the cheapest level 6 we have to work with, coming, well, we're a hard drop of 10, and has the on play to search for any two Royal Knights while trashing the rest, and has the ability to delete all level 4 lower Digimon when it sees another Royal Knight be played out. While BT19 Lord Knight ends up being the replacement of the older BT13 one, as this Lord Nightmon has the very useful effect to revive a level 4 lower Digimon from trash, thus making use of Magnamon or any of the rookies in the deck to be played out if they're in trash, as well as having the nifting ability to redirect in an opposing attack into any of your Royal Knights. And to round off the other in archetype stuff, I end up running one copy of Leopardmon from BT13 for the obvious ability to play out another Royal Knight at a reduced cost of 4, and being able to grant blocker whenever it sees another Royal Knight be played out. Well, and then from there, Jessamon being able to pop something that's 6,000 pop up to 6,000, with that threshold increasing by 200 for every other Digimon board, as well as granting a global boost to Sistermon and Royal Knights by 1,000 for each Digimon on board. And lastly is All for Speedra for the nifty ability to just, well, be able to trash top 2 sources of one opposing Digimon, as well as having the ability when it sees another Royal Knight get played out, being able to bounce the hand one Digimon with no sources on it. And to round out the 11 cost lineup is 2 copies of Medieval Gallant, as, well, given its nature and ability to reduce its own hard play cost by suspending down any 2 Digimon on board, this definitely becomes a very, well, thorn in the side card on tab board for the opponent, since when it gets hard played, it'll still trigger its all turns and trigger its one Digivolving. And thus, it allows it to be a control option for the deck, and one that definitely will stick around, that needs to be answered while your Royal Knights gets put under King Yggdrasill. And to continue on this count, I end up running one copy of BT13 Alphamon for the fact that it ends up allowing to, well, block off the opponent by placing a Royal Knight underneath itself from trash, and preventing any high-end 10 cost or higher Digimon from attacking players until the end of the opponent's turn, with the ability to protect itself from effects by just removing that roll of Knight it ends up taking in. Though do keep in mind that if that that card remains underneath Alphamon when it gets scooped up by Yggdrasill, you don't get to add that card underneath Alphamon when it gets sucked in. And well, continuing on, as we further increase the cost lineup, I end up running one copy of Craniumon for it being a much more heavier body and being able to, well, become unaffected and force an opposing Digimon to attack, which also helps into other plays within the deck. And then from there, one copy of Kentorismon from DT13 as well, to be able to, well, play around with security as well as being able to be memory efficient, and has the ability when attacking to burn one of your own security to be able to unsuspend and hit a opposing Digimon with minus 10,000 DP for other bits of control. Then from there, end up running two copies of BT13 Genkumon as another blocker body, with the ability to revive a Sistermon from trash, or being able to call out a Royal Knight that's under Yggdrasill, barring that isn't a Genkumon or Omnimon. And then from there is two copies of Gallimon from BT13, as it's another Digimon that can further reduce its own evolution cost, further its own hard play, reduce its hard play cost based on the number of cards in trash, is a rush body, and has the ability to pretty much control board, as on play or when attacking, in our case, gets to delete a 6,000 DP or less, but if it doesn't delete anything in that threshold, it gets to go after a 13 or more Digimon, being able to snipe out any bigger bodies. And that's it for the level 6 lineup. Now on to level 7s. And for the most part, most of this lineup is obviously still with an archetype. And first being, obviously, one of the flex spots now, being BT13 Examon, who on play gets to suspend one opposing Digimon and prevents it from being able to unsuspend next turn. And has the alternative effect that when it sees a opponent's Digimon become suspended, you can either suspend another opposing Digimon or unsuspend one of your own. And lastly, for the deck's still kill turn enabler, being full playset of BT13 Omnimon, who pretty much allows you to, well, one, delete one of your opponent's Digimon, or being able to call out the one of each unique name underneath Yggdrasill, and subsequently deleting Yggdrasill, and gives all of the Digimon you bring out through this effect rush, allowing you to pretty much march down your opponent with a whole lot of big bodies, as well as proccing their on-play effects. And to run off the Digimon lineup, I run the one copy of Susanomon Ace, given that it's an Omni-color evolution that, when Digivolving into and when attacking, you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon that's 10,000 DP or lower for each color in its source, as well as adding an additional 2,000 to that effect. With the main idea obviously being a control option, as well as keeping a body on board going into the next turn. Since again, Blast Evolution is one option that isn't affected by the soft evolution lock off of Yggdrasill. That's it for the Digimon. Now on to Tamers. Well, given the older versions of this deck, the Ex8 variant for me saw 2 copies of Shoto from Ex7 and 1 copy of BT13 Marcus. With Ex7 Shoto still being good in the fact that it grants your Digimon piercing and blocker generically, thus making all of your Roll Knights that don't already have blocker gain blocker at the end of your turn. While BT13 Marcus is here as the memory setter, as well as being another way to remove floodgates, since you end up hitting something with minus 5,000 when it suspends, which immediately triggers as it's on play. And that's it for the Tamer lineup. Now on to the options. And for me, the option lineup ends up being the normal go-to, with a full playset of Roll Knights of the Purge, since it ends up being draw 1, and has the delay effect to play out a Roll Knight Digimon underneath Yggdrasill, but you don't get to trigger their on-play effects, but at least you give them Rush. And lastly is the 1 copy of Heaven's Judgment for DP removal. As well, dropping this, since Shoto's in the deck, you are able to play this out, and with its main effect, allowing you to dish out my 6,000 for each color your Digimon have, which, given the nature of this deck, is able to go off a number of times based on how your field looks, with the security bomb effect being that it dishes a whopping 12,000 if checked in security. Well, that's it for the deck list itself. Now on to the combos. And well, starting off, for the most part, your mulligan in pretty much mostly aims to be quite memory efficient, since you do have to control the memory you give your opponent, lest they get ahead of you in your already Megazoo deck. Since already going first, Yggdrasill already taken 1 Yggdrasill already. So, with Magnamon being the first, well, BT13 Magnum being the first, that you'd want to see to play out of your Royal Knights, since you pretty much just instantly draw 1 once you get scooped up by Yggdrasill next turn. With Blanc and Shoto being, well, Blanc, Shoto, and Vmon as first play alternate first Digimon to pass turn with. Since Shoto ends up establishing passive memory gain as long as the opponent has Digimon on board, Blanc being the draw power, and V being a rookie rush to just slam into security with no blockers. And following that in terms of priority, Dynast, Lord Knight, Medieval Gallant, and Royal Knights of the Purge are secondary in the fact that each one is a tool for use. Dynast being the searcher, Lord Knight being able to recur most of your lower level stuff that's 4 lower, Medieval Gallant as control that sticks around on board, and Royal Knights of the Purge as a means to draw and add to the speed for Yggdrasill. Since for the most part, it's definitely a deck of piloting as you go based off of what you see in hand. Since for the most part, it's just playing out the rest of the Royal Knights in what situation seems best when they hit the board for the eventual Omnimon turn, as over time, obviously, the reduction will keep increasing as more and more stuff gets added underneath Yggdrasill. And thus, the kill turn with Omni ends up being quite variable based on what you see when you finally drop Omni to then march all over the opponent. Lastly, the rest of the deck as situational cards based off what occurs. Since, for the most part, the main idea is practically pretty much already on the 10, as you pretty much end up trying to stack in Royal Knights underneath Yggdrasill, and based off of what gets pretty much toolbox underneath, be spawn spit back out with Omni and be able to rush as long as you keep turn. And heck, even within that own ability, Omni can also be one of those cards that you spit back out off of the Omni turn, given that that isn't a name-limited ability. But yep, pretty much the deck in and of itself is pretty straightforward, as it's a whole lot of playing around with the toolbox. That's it for how the deck currently functions. Now on to pretty much the stuff, going over stuff that 2.5 grants it. As for the goodies that 2.5 grants the deck, the first and only card that comes from BT19 ends up being Queen Device, which, for its main effect, until the end of your opponent's turn, weather Digimon can't activate when digivolving effects, and gets it with a minus 3000 DP debuff, and then subsequently gets placed into the battle area. And just like the other Device series cards, as long as you don't have another Queen Device on board, you're able to ignore the quadruple requirements, making this card a very useful and memory efficient tool to get rid of floodgates. And for its security effect, it's equally defensive, as when checked in security, it's 2 of the opponent Digimon with second -2 for the turn, and then adds itself to hand. Then from there, the next card on the list ends up being the new Jessamon that we get from BG20, who's on play, allows it to play out an Etho Rene Import token. That's a 6000 DP white Digimon with reboot, blocker, and decoy for red and black. With Jessamon having the Your Turns effect, that once per turn, if it sees a Digimon being played, it gets to take out an 8000 DP or less Digimon, and then allows one of your Digimon to attack. In which case, if you pass turn with this, you give one of your Digimon pseudo rush. Pseudo blitz, I mean. And thus, we also segue into another good option for the deck, being the new Digimon X antibody. Though, given that we're under Yggdrasill's soft evil lock, you don't really go into this half the time, but it's still a good buy to hard play for its passive ability, since it's an alliance body, and during your turn, all of your system mon names and your Royal Knight trait Digimon gain the ability Piercing and the ability to attack into your opponent's unsuspended Digimon, which allows for partial control aspects, or during the kill turn, allows you to pierce through as you run over your opponent's smaller Digimon. They're targetable either way during the kill turn. And in their cases that you're able to Digivolve while no longer under Yggdrasill, you're able to, well, when Digivolve over just, really, allow one of your Digimon to become unaffected by your opponent's effects. And this ends up being a good segue, since it's terrible, ends up good is one that's tied to Jessamon GX, as long as it's a Jessamon GX name, all your Digimon end up gaining Piercing, and also the ability to attack into unsuspended Digimon, making it more inclusive. And that ends up segueing into another new option, the deck, being the new Jessamon GX Ace. And well, as already previously stated, given that it's an Ace Digimon, this ends up being able to bypass Yggdrasill's soft evolution lock, since you could blast into this during the opponent's turn. Or heck, since it also has the on-play effect for its alongside its when digitalizing effect and when attacking effect, to scoop up a Royal Knight from trash or hand as a bomb source, and then subsequently delete an opposing Digimon with as much or less DP than itself. Also has an attacking effect to unsuspend itself, and then for every 2 Royal Knight trait cards in source, you get to trash the top of your opponent's security. With this definitely seeing use pretty much during the kill turn, since either way, you get to really burn security, since you can use, since it has the unique condition of just asking for Justmon name and Genku name low 6s to DNA during your kill turn. Thus also being able to run it, and then from there, we end up seeing, for another option, being the new Ex8 Ace. Though it's less useful given that it no longer has anything that's on play. But it is loaded to the gills with effects. Since it's a raid, piercing, blocker, and evade body, it can pretty much survive a good number of things once. Since that whole combination stuff pairs well with the alterns to unsuspend this Digimon whenever it sees any other Digimon, well, any Digimon in fact, really, to unsuspend itself. And then from there, we also see the use of the new Alphamon, who's a barrier body and has the on-play effect to simply recover 1. And then from there, the rest of that when Digivolving effect really doesn't really see play, given that it's more so the Chronicle related effect. But for an Alterns effect, once per turn, if it sees a security card being removed from either stack, you get to hit one of your opponent's Digimon with minus 8000 DP for the turn. As well, in the case of Justmon X, we also see this Alphamon having a inheritable for its upgraded form. In this case, as long as this Digimon's in Oryuken for all turns, it practically has barrier, since it pretty much gets to burn your own security to protect itself from being leaving the battle area through any effects that aren't your own. And then from there, we also end up seeing the new Genku X, which is also on an equal playing field as Just X, in the fact that you don't really get to trigger, well, X antibody evolution while under Yggdrasill. However, it still has some nifty abilities to work with, since on the it's on the more defensive side, it has the ability to grant all of your Sistermon or Hawkmon, well, really just Sistermons really, names in your Royal Knights, reboot, and blocker on the opponent's turn, thus allowing you to, well, swing in and be able to reboot and have blockers at the ready. And then to go with GX support, it also grants all of your Digimon reboot and blocker. And then up next is also another new ace to work with, being Alphamon Oryuken Ace, who in this case is the one between the new Royal Knight Aces that are fusions. That's a little bit more limiting, since it's only really good for on-play. Since for on-play, it hits one of your opposing Digimon with minus 15 DP off the bend, but also has the passive ability of all turns to gain 3 memory, grant you 3 memory whenever it sees a security stack being removed. And then from there, next card up on the list ends up being the new Liberator support. In this case, we end up seeing Cool Boy's partner Digimon, the new Liberator Omegamon, who is also definitely a good playset to have since it's a blocker body that protects you, which also works well given its on delete places itself under Yggdrasill, and thus ends up adding to Yggdrasill's cost reduction effect, as well as the ability, while under breeding, when your security stack is removed, you by suspending this Digimon, in this case Yggdrasill, you're able to play out Omegamon from source. In this case, it's only this Liberated Omegamon. And that also plays into its on-play effect, that is only a dire situation effect, really. To on-play, while you have one or fewer security, allows Omegamon to immediately warp into an Omni X in hand, ignoring requirements and without paying the cost. And that also leeways into the final Digimon to look at for support, as we end up having Omnimon X to work with, who's another use, well, who one can go over your Omnimon, well, no longer under Yggdrasill, or heck, you can also just put this under Yggdrasill to call out through Omni, since for its on-play effect, or when digivolving, as long as you have Omni or X antibody in the Digimon sources, you choose one of both players' Digimon and delete the rest, and then you get to bot deck one opposing Digimon as subsequently. With the most part, this ends up being more so to play in for when you digivolve, though this Omnimon Omni-X is a raid piercing and blocker body, which makes it also see some value if you call this out from under Yggdrasill. And then lastly, you have the end of turn effect to once per turn, whenever Digimon gains rush, and the ability to attack without suspending, allowing you to go for one final push at the end of your turn. And then after that, we end up seeing the one useful body of new iteration of Cool Boy, who, during your turn, when your Digimon are played or digivolve, if any of them have the Royal Nitrate, you suspend them down to draw one and gain one memory. And during the opponent's turn, whenever it sees one of your Royal Knights leaving the battle area, you are able to play out Omegamon from hand without paying cost. Also being another instance where you can drop the new Liberator Omega to be a last-minute defender, or instantly warp into the new Omni X. And to round off cards from 2.5, we have the newest Royal Knights option card, the Last Guardian, which is effectively a searcher for the deck, as for play cost of 4, top decks 3 to add 1 Cool Boy, and then 1 Royal Knight or X antibody trait from among them, bot decking anything that wasn't searched, as well as having the useful delay to effectively protect an Omni from leaving the battle area, with this effectively being able to stack since there's no once per turn clause on it. So in cases like Omni X's ability to delete everything else, you get to really make use of it since you get to keep any Omnimons that would be deleted by that effect. And as well, given that it's a Royal Knight option, the Yggdrasill inheritables get to practically reduce, well, in effect, reduce the play cost of this, since you would be getting memory back, being refunded in memory per each Yggdrasill. So, at the high end, you practically can play this out for a cost of 1. And well, that's it for 2.5. We also have new stuff coming in further down the pipeline in the form of the newest iteration of BT13 Gallantmon, being the Box Summer promo for BT21, in the form of that new Gallantmon, which is a 12 cost to hard play, which is pretty good to work with under Yggdrasill's, reduction, and has the ability to further reduce as long as there is another Digimon on board that's 1300 DP or more, which is easy to do within Archetype, to further reduce the play cost by 2 for every 5 total cards in both players' trash, and is a rush and blocker body, with the on play to delete a 13 DP or more Digimon, and if this doesn't delete, you get to recover 1. With this being quite useful as another tech option within the deck. And that's it for the wrap-up for also potential future stuff as well. Now on to the closing. And that's about it for my view on Roll Knights. And for the most part, for closing thoughts, for the most part, the idea of this deck has now gotten a lot more faster to, compare with the faster meta that we see today. With all the new support from 2.5, pretty much giving it that boost. And given that it's a very topical deck, it's definitely something they'll likely see more evolved play down the line once it sees more support. As for the most part, it's another deck that's pretty much a tried and true method as long as, a very high know the skill ceiling. Given that, obviously, you're playing a very meta-dude deck. But overall, this has been my look at Royal Knights from Ex8, and look at how 2.5 gives it a boost, as well as the future support they'll be getting after 2.5. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and this is Cyberdog signing off.